if you guys have videos that you want me to react to or to watch on camera like this, then feel free to hit my email. You can find my email on my YouTube channel, or you could reach out to me on any other platform. All of my links are available on my YouTube channel. And also, shameless plug, just real quick, caveandhinchy.com. That's my first and last name.com. And you can find my podcast, The CEC Connection, the audio files, which is on YouTube as well. I also have a newsletter on Substack, so you can look up that too. It's Renaissance RVLTN in all caps on the latter word. Abbreviation is really what it is. Anyways, so the first video we got for today is going to be, we're going to watch Kamala Harris addressing us, we the people, right? We're going to watch her speaking to us about some shit. It says VP Kamala Harris makes public statement on Israel-Palestine conflict during the Benjamin Netanyahu visit. So she's commenting on Netanyahu's visit, which happened the other day. He gave a big speech and everything. I wasn't even aware that she was present. I didn't think she came unless this is on a different day or at a different time period than when I was watching. But I did not, or I was not aware that she was present, if that's what this title is suggesting. So let's get into it.
So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself.
Okay, it looked like this video was uploaded and published 1 day ago. So that she may had just met with him later. Also, I had heard something about her going to a sorority meeting. I'm underinformed on the details of that or whether it's even true. It came from a reliable source, someone who I get reliable information from typically, but I haven't checked in on that myself yet. But I was under the impression that she was at a sorority meeting or some shit whenever Netanyahu came and delivered his speech when everybody was attacking the Capitol and shit. So, and this says like 1 day ago. So it may have not even been in the same time frame as I was anticipating this video to be based in. So there's an underscore.
Including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. From when I was a young girl collecting funds to plant trees for Israel, to my time in the United States Senate and now at the White House, I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself, and how it does so matters.
Just real quick, I get the sentiment and I agree with the fact that Israel has the right to defend itself, but can we get a comment from you, just some sort of opinion on all the graffiti and defacement of our monuments in the Capitol during this whole situation by a bunch of ignorant ideologues who like are brainwashed and just want a reason to go out and spread their fucking emotional tension to other people and direct it at something that feels like a real cause, like they're fighting for something, but really it's just a bunch of bullshit. Or maybe you disagree with that, you know? Maybe you think that they're justified in graffitiing the fact that Hamas is coming, but you condemn Hamas is a terrorist organization out of one side of your mouth, yet the other side of your mouth is filled with nothing but fucking air and silence on something that should go hand in hand with the condemnation of Hamas as a terrorist organization. I mean, come on now. Where's the consistency? We already know, like, she's a pretentious liar, anyways. It's been proven already. She literally went on the Breakfast Club recently, talking about like, here's my analysis of the situation coupled with the facts of the situation, which you can look up for yourself here on YouTube. So the facts are, she said that she used to smoke weed. Yes, she inhaled was the emphatic point that she made, to get the point across that yes, she inhaled it, didn't just fake puff it, and subsequently got high. Um, Also, then she proceeded. Charlemagne asked her, "Excuse me, I want to know what you were listening to when you were high." He said, "Snoop." That was the bait. Uh, Intentional or not, that's not what I mean, but that was the little hook. She saw that and latched onto it. Yep, that was Snoop. Also Tupac, right? She said she listened to Snoop Dogg and Tupac to get high when she was in college. The problem is, uh, she finished her whole education process, the bar and all that shit in the 80s. I think it was like mid to late 80s. Um, and then Tupac and Snoop Dogg were both 90s. The first records they released were both in the 90s. I think one was 91 and one was 93. Pretty sure Pac was 91 and Snoop's was 93. Snoop was Doggy Style and Pac's was Tupacalypse Now in 91. If I don't have the dates backwards. Regardless, they hadn't even dropped in the 80s like that. Yet she says she was listening to them to get high in the 80s. And then on top of that, when she was in California, she arrested a whole shitload of people for smoking weed. And then you're going to come out and say that you smoked it, which, I mean, maybe that's neither here nor there because she was in college. She's older now. That could be easily argued against. So, whatever to that point. But my analysis, moving on into my analysis of that situation, and maybe I'll pull that video up here in a second too, so just so you guys can see what I'm talking about before we cut this today's video. But my analysis of the situation is she's trying to play her black card, so to speak, to go out and try to, and it's super cringy for anybody who can psychoanalyze sort of what's probably happening. It's extremely cringy and honestly somewhat difficult to even watch, but it's my analysis, my observation that she's trying to be pretentious just to fit in with her black card. That way she can pull in more attention and try to win over voters in a dishonest way, because that is absolutely dishonest. Because she's not being true to who she is. She's not being herself. She's pretending to be somebody she's not in order to secure votes just so she could beat Donald Trump. And that is sleazy as fuck, in my opinion. Like, no integrity whatsoever. Like, no integrity at all. Matter of fact, I'm going to play that video here after this one. I'm going to look for it and I'm going to play that video next. That way you guys can see what I'm talking about. So yeah, anyways, that was me rambling. Let's continue with the video.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans. Hamas has committed horrific acts of sexual violence and took 250 hostages. There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza. Sagi Deko Hen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Idan Alexander, Keith Siegel, Omer Nutra, and the remains of American citizens Judy Weinstein, Gad Haggai, and Itai Hen are still being held in Gaza. I have met with the families of these American hostages multiple times now, and I've told them each time they are not alone, and I stand with them. And President Biden and I are working every day to bring them home. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Agreed. Right. Reasonable. And I get the sentiment, whether or not you're genuinely compassionate about that or not. Agreed. However, what about the border you're in charge of? Don't we have a safety crisis going on near our border and inside of our own country right now? I mean, have you even visited the border since you got called out on not having visited the border to your face, to where all of Americans who were watching that engagement, that dialogue in that interview probably cringed at how terribly and unsuccessfully you dodged that question, trying to manipulate the way that your words come out of your mouth to make it seem like you were handling it when really you just used a bunch of loaded fucking words that were extremely ambiguous. I mean, I agree it's bad for people to suffer. I agree with a lot of what you're talking about with the whole Israel engagement, support, etc. I agree with the sentiments. I agree with the ideas in that regard, in that respect specifically. But please, can we fucking do something about the border under which you are, like the border that you are in control of, that you're responsible for? How the fuck are you working tirelessly? Hey, here's my thing. How are you working every day tirelessly with President Joe Biden to bring home hostages and do all this shit overseas whenever you can't even do the bare minimum to provide safety within our country for Americans in our home, where we've got little girls and boys and all kinds of people being raped and murdered and shit on a regular basis now, more than ever before, because of the border alone. And then the fentanyl, the drugs. I've lost 2 people already, one of them to an overdose. People I consider brothers. One of them was from a car accident and he was on his bicycle. I've lost a brother to fentanyl overdose already. Something, like, you talk about wanting to address the root causes. That was one of the reasons that she's explicitly given for not being at the border, because she said she was somewhere else. I think she said what, Guatemala? No, not Guatemala. I forget where she said it was. She said she was in somewhere, another country, trying to get to the root cause of the border crisis, and hasn't even visited the border itself one time, hasn't spoken with the director one time of the Border Patrol. These are red flags everywhere. We got somebody who's being pretentious, somebody who's already been busted in a lie on camera and audio. We got somebody who has certain responsibilities she's supposed to be taking care of already as it is and has failed, absolutely failed to do so adequately, even on a basic level. We cannot allow her to take office. She will finish. I don't know if I could say that. She will finish. She will finish off our country. We're already teetering on the edge of a civil war as it is, which may not be avoidable regardless of who gets in office, irrespective of whether it's Trump or fucking Biden somehow ends up in there again, or Harris or Vance or whoever like the fuck ends up. Like it doesn't matter who is in office, be that her, be it Trump, whoever, we may not be able to avoid a civil war. But if we're going to move into an unforeseen future that is, excuse me, already fraught with strife and stress and conflict, not just here, but everywhere around us, and then also within our own country, which would make it easy if we're all divided for foreign invaders to come in and pick us apart very easily, just like ancient Athens, Greece, just like the Roman Empire. We need somebody leading us who is brazen, who has integrity, who is honest. We need somebody like Trump. I'm not a Trump dick rider. I support Trump all the way as far as I'm concerned, because he is, as far as I can see, the best hope for our future as a nation. However, I also supported Ramaswamy. If Ramaswamy was running, he would be an equal, as far as I'm concerned, it would be Trump versus Ramaswamy in my head. Who am I going to vote for? Because I also, so it's not about like the person, it's about the ideas. And do I believe, not only do I believe you, but do I believe in you? And Kamala, I think these are dangerous waters. And for people who aren't aware, awake, conscious, and don't think for themselves, who hear things or like have some sort of emotional tie to a certain community, which is sort of like the same reason a lot of black folk or people who grew up in those communities, like myself included, before I started waking up and really thinking for myself, I have family members and all my people around me supporting BLM and shit because it's like heritage, right? It, without actually investigating the truth of all the politics behind it, the idea on its face seems like something that we should all be in favor of. And if you're not, then it seemed like you would be prejudiced, because that's how I saw it initially before I knew anything about what it actually was. BLM, I'm talking about here. Before I knew anything about what it actually was and who was behind it, what was going on behind the scenes, all the fucking IRS paperwork and shit, before I figured out it was a scam and all the shit was brought into light to show the objective truth and not what the media tried to portray a lie about and distort, that's when I woke up. Before that, I was right there next to my people in the trenches, ready to march right alongside them. Like most people that I've known in my entire life do not think for themselves. And unfortunately, that is the case in socioeconomically speaking and lower. I can't even say race. Like a lot of people will say in black communities, but it ain't even that way anymore. Maybe once upon a time in the fucking 80s, early 90s, some shit like that. But guess what, bro? I grew up in this shit too. It ain't about race. It's never been about race. A lot of Democrats, I won't just stick the label and say all Democrats, but I'll say it's primarily the left leaning individuals who try to play the whole race card shit. but it's not about race. It never has been. And when race gets brought into it, it's either a distortion and a repeated ideology without somebody thinking for themselves, or it's an intentional divisive tactic to try to separate us and for God knows what reasons, right? Because it's not just a fucking one-dimensional, two-dimensional reason. There's layers and layers to this shit. Anyways, excuse me, it got off on my rant there. Let's let her finish speaking, and then I'm gonna move into the video so you guys can see her interacting on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne and them.
Thanks to the leadership of our President, Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And it is important that we recall what the deal involves. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Israel is secure, all the hostages are released, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure, Jewish, and democratic state. And
I don't think Hamas is going to agree to that. I could be completely mistaken in this, but wasn't that offered previously? Hasn't that already been like an option that has been proposed in the past? I could be completely wrong about that. Please correct me if I am wrong about that. I like it's on the very outer edges of my memory, but it seems like I read that in an article or something. Um I don't know, I want to say maybe a month or two ago. Yeah, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, what I'm referencing, and you can either correct me or clarify real quick in the comments, I'll look it up after the video. But anyways, just for other people who are watching this, because that would take another video for me to just come and correct that. So yeah, drop a comment if you guys know what I'm referencing. Anyways, I could be wrong.
and one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve. And I will close with this then. It is important for the American people to remember the war in Gaza is not a binary issue. However, too often the conversation is binary, when the reality is anything but. So I ask my fellow Americans to help encourage efforts to acknowledge the complexity, the nuance, and the history of the region. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians, and let us condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate of any kind. And let us work to unite our country. I thank you.
Can you define hate for me? Because coming from a radical left position, there's no There's no fucking telling what is included in hate. Anyways, that's the end of that video.